Hey everyone, it's David with Neo 7 CNC, and I have another laser review for you today. This one was sent to me by Niji, and this is the Master 2S from Niji. Now, they sent me this free of charge and with no strings attached, so these words are my own. As with all of my reviews, I'll tell you about the good and the bad as I see it. So stick around and we'll get right into it. All right, so I'm setting up the shot like this so I can do some B-roll and some kind of picture-in-picture while I'm talking about this. So the first thing is, when I received it, it was very well contained in a nice little box. Upon opening it, it was completely nested inside of this kind of plasticky foam with the cutout kind of stuff. And then it was saran wrapped basically to keep everything together inside the box. So it arrived intact, no issues there at all. As you can see, when I was taking it apart or taking the packaging apart, once I got into it, everything was there. There was nothing missing. There was actually some extra parts in there, which I didn't need, and I'll show you those later. But assembly was very straightforward. The manual was a little bit, and this is, I'm seeing a trend here with the manual. It was a little bit lacking in how to get from point A to point B, but with the help of the wiki page that they reference in the book, things were much clearer. And I do understand that when you're actually printing publications, there can be lag in process development or processing of the machine. You know, new techniques don't necessarily always make it into the manual. So I'm not going to ding them too hard on that because I've seen that in lots of products. So it's not just isolated to them by any stretch. So I just wanted to point that out. The wiki is going to be your friend as far as assembly and better steps as how to get started with the machine. So once I got it put together and turned it on, I was kind of shocked, and I'm just being honest here. So when you see that laser beam and it's blue, it's not like a laser pointer, that's the actual business end of the machine. It's a little bit startling. Now it's at a super low power. I don't know what that power is. It's not full throttle like it's trying to cut something. And if I left it sitting there on my bench and that spotter beam, let's call it, was on, it's not marking the bench. So it's not actually powerful enough. You never, ever, ever want to look into any of those laser beams. And that's a good segue for here for a moment. This is a laser. It is dangerous. Always use the goggles that they provide or one that you know is going to work for this wavelength of laser. I'm not kidding around with that kind of stuff. It's too important to mess your eyesight up. I typically don't look at the laser while it's going. I will look through my camera monitor or something like that. And really, when it comes down to dialing in a job, if I can segue, when it comes into dialing in a job, let the job run, see what you like, see what you don't like, change your settings, and then run it again until you get the recipe that works for what you're trying to do. So don't look at the laser beam. That's the safest way to be. So that's the way I do it. So I would hope that you would learn from my experience on that. So back to the assembly. So using the wiki, I was able to get everything assembled. It's really just 4 bolts. These 4 bolts right here that hold the moving cross arm on, and plugging in some cables, and Bob's your uncle. It was really that straightforward. And there were some other pieces that were in there that I was curious. I'm like, okay, what's that for? These little right angle look like stainless steel pieces. Those are if you're going to mount the laser onto a table or work surface, so the machine doesn't move around while you're trying to laser things. So that's what those are for. I ended up not using those. I didn't have any issues with the laser jumping around, and I'm still dialing in the speeds and feeds. I got great results with what I did, but the machine wasn't moving so fast that it was jumping around on my bench or anything like that. So those were there. While I'm talking about what's included, all the tools, you know, I'm a big fan of this. All the tools that I needed were included. Here's an extra acorn nut that was in the pack. It came with some zip ties for some cable management. Got a few of those left over. And it's got a kind of a cleaning brush here, and then this marker, which looks like a dry erase marker, really. A couple of sample pieces of wood. I'm not really sure what wood that is. Some craft paper, which I like to use that for stencils. And it even came with an anodized aluminum dog tag and this little plastic, almost like a beer bottle green piece of acrylic, and then the manual and the safety glasses. And those were all the materials that came with the unit. Now it does come with a power cord, standard wall wart type power cord, and then a USB cable to connect it to your computer. Alrighty, so once I got everything put together, what I ended up doing was I wanted to test one of the interesting features of this laser, and that's the fact that it has Bluetooth. So I went to the App Store and downloaded the Niji app, and this is on an iOS device. I don't have an Android to test with, so I can't speak to that one. But on the iOS device, once you had Bluetooth turned on your phone, and then you started the laser, it just kind of found it. All right, so I'm going to go through an image, and I don't have a good way to record this off my phone. So I'm going to do some screenshots here, and we'll just put those in the video beside me. So I'm bringing up kind of the clip art page that I mentioned before, and this is just the first one that comes up, so there's no rhyme or reason to this, but hey, there's SpongeBob on there again. So I'm going to clip that. So let's use the SpongeBob, and I'll show you every page that I go through, and we'll hit done. So now we're in the basically the scale page, and it's giving you the border for the machine so you can see how big you can make it. And so it's giving you the width and height in millimeters down at the bottom, and it locks that scale so that you don't distort the image. And because my job, or my material that I'm trying to use, is roughly 4 inches by 4 inches, I'm just going to do 90 millimeters. So we'll do set size, and so now it kind of puts it back on the work surface representation and gives you the width and the length. And you say, okay, I'm good with that. You say set size, and then I'll hit done. And so now here's the page I was telling you about that's asking which one do you prefer. Now again, I don't see a huge difference, so I'm just going to pick one. So I'll pick the one on top. And so now we're in the carving window screen, and this is where I was confused. And so you have carving time, and then you have laser power. Laser power is obvious. This is an engraving. You know, you can play around with the laser power because it's going to depend on the material and things like that. And again, you have to experiment because every material is going to react a little bit differently to whichever machine that you happen to be using. So it's always a little bit of trial and error. If you're doing repetitive jobs, once you do that work up front and you get it dialed in, then you can kind of set it and forget it from that point forward until something changes. Or like your material supplier changes or something like that, you might have to do some tweaking. But the part in this that was confusing to me is the carving time. And right now on this particular item, it's set to 4 milliseconds. And I'm like, what does that mean exactly? I think it's how much time the laser is dwelling in a certain spot. Maybe I could be completely wrong, but I ended up finding that a lower setting was better on one of these. So this was my first attempt, and you probably won't be able to see that too good, but I did 8 milliseconds carving time and at 30% laser power, and I've got some overburn, and it was kind of deep. So I ended up changing it, and so this time all I did was adjust the carving time. So that went down. I changed it from 8 milliseconds to 5 milliseconds, and I left it at 30% laser power, and I got a much better result. So it's just a little bit confusing. That could be the speed, but they're just looking at it in a different way. So if you're going to use the mobile app for this, you'll definitely want to play with that. But once you're at this screen, you've got three more options across the bottom. Let's say you've got setting, which gets into, it says set laser weak level. Right now it's set to 10. Set tilt detection sensitivity. That's for the machine. That's if it gets bumped or maybe it hits something while it's doing the job. That could be a way for it to shut itself down. And then you've got set motor speed. Right now it's on fast, but there you have slow, medium, fast, very fast. So I'm not going to change anything on there, but the other one is preview. And I don't know if you can hear that, but I've got the machine turned on over on the bench so that I could kind of walk through this. So I'm connected to the machine right now. So as you can maybe hear, I'll get over there so you can hear it. It's doing the preview. And so again, that's showing you where it's going to do the work. So I'll hit stop on that. And I really like the fact that it just continues to do it. So if I was happy with all these settings and I hit start, it's going to fire it up and start burning that piece of wood. So I'm not going to do that right now. But I did want to show you, kind of walk through the app, because I do find it interesting. Could it be better? Sure. Is it useful? I think it is. One thing that I also discovered about this is there's a little red button on the laser, and of course, like most people maybe, I went and pushed that little red button. And so what it does is, what I found out rather, is that if you have a job that you've done before and you want to continually do that job, you can run that machine without anything being connected to it because that job is stored in the machine. And so if you hit that button, it's going to give you the preview, and then if you hit it again, it's going to do the job. And so that's important to know, because if you hit that button by accident and you're not ready to do the job and you don't have your safety equipment on, you don't want to do that. So you'll want to unplug the machine. There is no on-off button. I've had that critique before with other devices, and I still think it's a good idea, but there is no on-off button on that. Once you plug it up, it's alive. So just know that. All right, so let's see what this machine can do, right? So I'm going to be superimposing a lot of different things while I'm talking, probably pictures of the jobs in a little bit better detail, video of the laser working. I may have some kind of in the dark shots too of the laser working, because those are kind of interesting. It is a flashing light, so if you're sensitive to that, I'll try to put a kind of timestamp around it so you can avoid that if that's an issue for you. But so the first thing, like I'd mentioned before, was I tried the 4x4 coasters with the SpongeBob, and that was actually the clip art that was on the app on the phone. And I'll try to put all the settings that I used, as well as the time for the job, how long it took, as best I can as I'm showing the items. So I don't know that I have the time on these. I'll have to go back and look. But again, those turned out very well. A little bit of overburn on the first one at 8 milliseconds carving time, and then 5 milliseconds carving time is a lot better, I would say. Both of those were with 30% laser power, as I mentioned before. So one thing that I definitely like to do is on these wooden things, I like to see what it takes to go through them. And a good place for me to start is what I used last time when I was testing another laser. That's almost a good head-to-head comparison. And so what I ended up doing on this one was roughly the same as I dialed in the settings on the last machine that I tested. And so I got 99 millimeters per minute. I don't think that's actually per second. It's 900 millimeters per minute. This is 8 passes at 100% laser power, and it was fine. So this, again, this is 2.6, 2.7 millimeter wood, and it did just like some last ones that I've reviewed. You may recognize this image from the last laser review that I did. And again, I will show you closer, but this was at 90% power, 4,200 millimeters per minute, one pass. It took roughly 20 minutes, And this is a 3" by 3" or 75mm by 75mm image using the Master 2S. And if I hadn't told you that, would you be able to tell a difference between the last one that I reviewed? Probably not. Outside of the wood grain showing through a little bit, I don't think you could tell those apart. So I call that a win. It was very capable. This was an image that I did I think I did that through the phone. One thing that I forgot to mention on the phone is I can just pull up any image that I've got on my phone. If you go and find some clip art on Google, or you've got an image that you took and you want to commit it to a piece of material, you can do that straight off your mobile device as well. Again, that took 20 minutes, and that's like a tile design. There's probably ways to make that faster. If that was just a line vector instead of an actual image, it would go much, much faster. I already talked about the EVA foam. This took 10 seconds to cut that. And I honestly, seeing how fast the material got out of the way of the laser beam, I could probably do it even faster than that. But once I saw that cut in 10 seconds, I was like, okay, that's pretty good. The stencils. So this is just a piece of that craft paper, and super clean. The pieces fell right out. And this was 900mm a minute, 100% power, 1 pass. It blew right through that. Fairly good cardstock. I love doing this. I use this in the thumbnail for another video that I did, but it says this is a test, and this is that thick craft tag, and it blew through that as well. And this was similar results to the last machine. And this is 100% power, 1200mm a minute, 3 passes, and that was using the Master 2S, and it did a really good job. It's hard to tell. I'll do a picture so you can see how fine the little pieces of paper that are holding the insides of some of these stencil letters in. It's really fine. We'll save that for last. So this is the anodized dog tag, and the readability is fantastic on this. I don't know, they only sent one as a test. I know you can buy these online, but this is a black anodized dog tag, and I just put Neo 7 CNC on here, and it looks really, really good. You could have gone a lot thicker. I could have made something more interesting, but as a test, this worked out well. The business card, the black painted business card, and what I'll do is get a good shot kind of in the glare from one of the lights so you can see what it leaves on here. But it's basically like it goes from glossy black to almost a matte black, very dark brown is what it looks like on here. But it does work, but I don't know how useful that is, let's say. It was a good experiment. The little piece of plastic, and let me grab something to measure this so I can tell you how thick this is. I'll need to superimpose an image that I took where hopefully you can see. So this is 2.78 roughly millimeters thick, and or 0.113 inches. And I tried my best to go through this, or to cut out a circle on here. I did 4 different attempts, and I was using crazy number of passes. I think I actually stopped testing at 17 passes. And if you look with it backlit from the edge, you can see how deep I got through the material. And I just kind of reached a point where I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's probably very feasible. Now, what I'm curious of, is it because of the color? If this was a black acrylic, would it do differently because of the light absorption? I don't know, but I don't have the material to test that out with. So from an etching standpoint, it does work. You could have fun with that. I just put a Neo 7 CNC stencil mark on here, and it looks okay. That probably should have gone bigger, but for engraving, yes, absolutely. The last little thing to talk about is the stainless steel. And I'll do a better picture so you can see this up close. But we got a mark on here, very similar results to the last time. It took, I want to say it took somewhere around 20 minutes. If I can remember, I'll put this on the screen, or if I think I took a picture of it in my phone so I could have it. Maybe it was 23 minutes. But anyway, I'll put if I can find the time, I'll put it on here. It was a slow process because I was going super slow, and I had the laser cranked up to try to put as much heat into this as I could. And if you look at the back of it in the glare, you can actually see the job from the other side of the material where the heat that was dumped into this warped it. And that's also kind of in line with what I saw last time. But again, we're just annealing this and changing its color. You can't feel any sort of anything on here. It just feels smooth. So if you're trying to do metals, I've had somebody ask about precious metals and different things like that. This is not your machine. So just know that. All right, so let's talk pros and cons. So I've got my list on my phone, so I apologize for looking down at it, but I can't remember all of this. But let's go through the good, or the pros first. So it was well packaged. It arrived intact. Nobody likes receiving something broken, and I would like to think that they went to great lengths to make sure that that was not an issue. Because again, you have an optical device that's got a laser, it's got circuit boards in it. You know, it's got some plastic pieces on it. No, none of the moving pieces are plastic, but like the end caps and what the machine sits on. So you want to make sure that that stuff doesn't get damaged. And when they create that kind of foam cocoon for it, it's pretty well protected. I like the fact that it comes with not only the tools you need to put it together, but things to test cut right out of the box. That's a good thing. It's got cleaning tools and the spare parts if you wanted to attach it to something. For the cable management, it had the zip ties. It's got the manual. And again, the manual could be better, but I think in this day and age, what you're seeing is more and more companies are pushing you to online documentation. And the reason is because they can change it when they need to change it, and they're not reprinting hundreds or thousands of little instruction booklets. So it just kind of makes sense. So the wiki was the savior for that. It works on a good complement of materials, very similar to machines that I've tested in the past. And we added some new ones for this particular test, and we had good results with that. So I think that's a plus. It was easy to assemble, basically 4 little nuts with the tool that was included with the laser, and we were basically ready to go, so no issues there. And then it did have the Allen wrench, and that was just for using the 2 screws to attach the laser to the X axis. The small physical size, you could view that as a pro or a con. I think for the price point of this machine, it's probably a pro. I mean, it's extremely portable. It's not taking up a lot of room in your shop or wherever you're trying to use it. You could have a small army of these things running, in fact, to get more throughput, and it would take up very little space. So I see that as a plus. It's relatively fast. Again, I didn't have it running so fast that it was moving off the table, but you know, it was comparable to items that I've tested in the past. It's also very powerful. You know, we went through the plywood. We tried to go through the acrylic. Again, that's probably a material choice thing. But doing things like the anodized aluminum or the craft paper, even the wood, that stuff's relatively fast. I like the mobile app. The fact that I can Bluetooth to that thing and not even have to hook it to a computer for a very simple job, or some more kind of creative freedom to just go find something online and then just send it to it and let it do it. I found that to be pretty easy to use. The red button that's on it for allowing you to kind of do repetitive jobs without having anything connected to it other than the power, that's also a plus. It does work with Lightburn. I didn't really get into that, but a lot of my testing I did with Lightburn. Actually, all the testing I did with Lightburn, except for the few tests that I did using the mobile app. And outside of, all I had to do was basically change the work envelope setting of the device inside of Lightburn, and that was ready to go. Let's talk about some cons. The biggest con that I see with this is the focusing. Now, it's not insurmountable. It's easy enough for me to do. They give you some recommendations on height from the laser to the work surface, or the laser, the laser to the work surface. Having a gauge block or something like that would make that a lot easier. Or, there are laser tests you could do out there to do some, like, actual using the laser to do some testing and see where you get the better result. What I ended up doing was dialing it in until I got the best focus on the dot, because you'll see it get fuzzy, and then as you focus in, it'll get sharp, and then it'll start getting fuzzy again. So, and you've got some wiggle room in there. And so I just dialed it in when it was on low power, obviously, to where I got the finest dot on the material, especially if I'm trying to write on the craft paper or engrave the craft paper. And I got very good results. So, and the fact that I could do this level of detail on this very thick craft paper tag, I think the focusing was handled. But some could find that fidgety, especially if you're using materials that have multiple thicknesses, and you're doing a lot of not necessarily batch processing, but first in, first out processes. So you've got different products and you've got to adjust between heights. That could be tricky. You might end up actually creating different platforms of different thicknesses. So instead of adjusting the laser, you actually just swap out the platform. That could be one way around that if you're doing a lot of volume. Not everybody does. I mentioned this already, but a con could also be the mobile app and its quirkiness. The fact that the image library randomly rearranges every time you come into the app or the image library. I found that to be weird, but I guess it is what it is. And then some of the confusing terminology where they're talking about, you've got laser power, which is understandable, but the kind of the duration or the time for the laser beam, the longer the time, the darker the image, the lower the time, the lighter the image. Logic would dictate that if you up the time, then you're going to be cutting something. So again, I didn't cut anything through the mobile app, but maybe it's possible. So that's just the kind of, as I see it, quick and dirty. On the cons list, I don't see anything that's critical. Every machine's going to have its nuances, and you just kind of have to play with that. But overall, I think it's a good machine. Well, this wraps up our review of the Niji Master 2S desktop laser engraver. It's a great little machine to get into the technology, and it's certainly very capable. The only limitation that I really saw is going to be the size that it's able to work in. If 17 by 17 centimeters or 6.7 inches by 6.7 inches works for you, this would be a great little machine to get, certainly at the price point that it's offered at currently. So thanks for taking your time to watch this video, and we'll see you next time.